Greetings everyone, my name is Etterville, and I welcome you all to my Let's Play of a Mega Man Classic fan game. It's one that I've been meaning to do ever since early 2016, but due to a multitude of reasons, I hadn't found the time or energy to actually record the parts. And even when I recorded all the video footage, which was in early 2016, it took a few months before I could actually get the time to record commentary and whatnot. But by the time I uploaded it to YouTube, I noticed that there were several major updates to the game that improved the engine, part of the level design, and replaced the music. Like for example, the music is now, instead of being MIDIs, it's mostly 8-bit remixes now. And sorry for talking over the intro, it's mostly self-explanatory. If you're familiar with this title, you'll know exactly which fan game I'm playing. But essentially, Mega Man and Roll were talking about how Dr. Wily had at least 20 different previous attacks, a combination of the main games as well as some fan games. And just when Rock thought he was free from Dr. Wily suddenly attacking and being able to protect Light Labs, Wily took the chance to kidnap Roll and disable Rush completely. So this is Mega Man Dr. Wily's Final Attack by Delp Labs, aka the Skipper 1995. The upgrades to the engine include 60 FPS instead of 30 FPS, PAL swapping of weapons, weapon demonstrations, chiptune music for the most part, and a lot more level design changes. Compared to the previous version of this title, it's definitely an improvement, and I will be playing not with infinite lives, although it doesn't really make that much of a difference. This game isn't that hard. Anyways, we play with Mega Man 2 physics, we can jump and shoot, that's it. And we don't have Rush. In fact, we have less capabilities compared to Mega Man 2 because we don't get item 1, 2, or 3, and we lost Rush, so we just need to rely on our jumping and shooting abilities. Now we start with an intro stage. These solid blocks can be destroyed by just shooting at it 3 or 4 times, and we start with Tellies and the Mega Man 1 Mets. So just to get your feet wet with the game. And these spines, we shoot them, they'll fire a spread of those pellets. Coming up here is one of the new changes made to this title. These Sniper Joes, you have to wait for them to start firing so you can actually damage them, but now if you shoot at them, you can launch their shields upwards and start damaging them. This is one of many updates made to several of the enemies' level design. And interestingly enough, about the Sniper Joes, if you wait right next to them, they'll never actually fire at you. They'll only fire at you once you cause them to throw up their shields. That's when they'll fire, just when the shields are starting to come back down. And as said before, now we have an 8-bit remix of Mega Man and Bass's Road Master Museum intro stage theme. Before it was a MIDI version, but now it's an 8-bit version. And for my comments on this intro stage, I agree it's one of the better ones in comparison to other Mega Man fan games. It introduces Mega Man's mechanics of jumping and shooting, as well as several mainstay enemies that you'll see soon enough. So it gradually increases difficulty and will prepare you for most of the challenges that you'll see later. It's a nice usage of using Tellies, Spines, the Mets, and Sniper Joes, as well as these destructible walls to get you started. We have a gradual progress curve of difficulty where you start up with easy, where you don't jump over bottomless pits, then you go over spikes and bottomless pits, and then continue to fight enemies in more difficult configurations. This trend will hold for the most part in most of the other levels. In fact, it was improved compared to the previous version. Another improvement is that you'll actually get a notice at the bottom where you'll actually hit a checkpoint, or whenever you hit a checkpoint. I'll be making a lot more of these comparisons from my memory about what are some of the improvements compared to this in the previous version, and trust me, there are a bunch of them that makes this game a lot more fun to play. Anyway, here's the first boss, this gray Big Eye. It's like the first boss in Mega Man Powered Up, the first boss. Basically, it'll try jumping over you just like a normal Big Eye, although it's completely predictable in its jumping arcs. And after it jumps, after a short while it'll fire that orb at you, at your current jump position. Rinse and repeat, and it'll die. It's one of the easiest bosses in the game, it is. But the many improvements added to this title make it takes it from being an average title, or average to mid title as it was originally, to something that's above average to being a bit more memorable. Although that may also be due to the fact that I played many other fan games. Anyway, here are the 8 Road Masters that we have to fight in this game. Starting from the top left, we have Spearman, Earthman, Weatherman, Glacierman, Digital Man, Sound Man, Speed Woman, and Coppice Man. Now, I'm going to start off with going to a Digital Man stage because he's kind of weak against the Mega Buster, plus his weapon, the Double Shock, is quite useful. Here we can see the silhouettes of the 8 Robot Masters. It kind of reminds me of the Mega Man 10 Robot Master intros. And we have the Robot Master intro team from Mega Man V from Game Boy. And here's the Digital Man stage, which has a lot of electricity and digital 0-1s in the background. In fact, it uses Number Man's team from Mega Man Battle Network 1. In order to get through these colored blocks, you need to destroy those eyes of the same color. Just be careful because running into them will damage you. And when I played through this game first, I always missed that E-Tank because I thought there was a wall in the background if you didn't destroy it in the correct order. And we have these floating eyes, or whatever they are. The red eyes, when destroyed, will actually fire those projectiles in a completely cardinal direction, north, south, east, west, or up, down, left, right, whereas the cyan ones or blue ones, they'll fire diagonally. We also saw a nice pun enemy, those electric sheep or electric rams, fitting because RAM, computers, digital, etc. And the thing that I had to go run past from the upward pattern over here, those are firewalls. They will instantly kill you if you touch them. And we have these glass panels from the Sheepman stage. It's fitting because that was a digital stage as well. Although I wish we had those mouse enemies before, like in the Sheepman stage. That would be interesting. And here's another new enemy type. Whatever these floating enemies are, once they get close enough to you, they'll fire those electric shots in a downward pattern. One straight downwards and one diagonally to left and right. They can be quite annoying to hit, especially as they stay above you usually, so you better get good at dodging them. But I agree that this is a fitting tune for the stage. And for the most part, most of the stage teams fit the stage designs. Although I disagree with one or two of the music changes, but I'll get into that in part 3 when we get there. Alright, following this point there's actually a split pad. As you may have noticed in the menu, there are 5 letters to collect, the Brian letters, B, R, Y, A, and N. Make sure to take the right split in this path so it gets a little bit easier, well, around here specifically. Remember to go to the right here, and you'll be taken to the path where you can get the Brian letter. If you go on the left side of that split, you'll most likely not have enough time to actually get the N letter like over here. And be careful not to shoot the green platform first, otherwise you'll end up getting screwed and fall into the pit. That happened to me once or twice. And this is where the paths meet up again. I will show off where each of the split paths in each of the stages, so after I complete the stage, I'll show where the first path leads into here. It's not much of a difference. In fact, I would say the main path's more difficult than the second path, although the first one's focused much more on speedy orientation. And that's the last gimmick of this stage. Those Sparkman gabules, or should I say digital gabules. They work the same way as the Sparkman gabules, where after a while of moving left or right, they'll flash and then release that electric shock, and if you get touched by it, you'll take some damage. But otherwise, Digital Man is one of the easiest Robot Master stages to go through, and because of how the boss is weak against the Mega Buster, well, that's why I suggest you go through his stage first. Anyway, here's Digital Man. He basically has 2 attacks. The first one is where you can teleport to the middle of the room and create that electric shock in the bottom. Once that electric or thunderbolt hits the ground, make sure to jump, or just before that. The second one is where he fires those 2 shock orbs that bounce around the room. And then after a while of releasing those orbs, after they bounce around enough, he'll go swing around to the other side of the room. For this attack, or for the most part of this battle, I strongly suggest you stay around the center of the room so that you can dodge the shock orbs, because they do leave a hole in where you can stand in between, so you can dodge these easily, like you can see over there, because they walk left or right most easily. And then when he fires the shock orbs, make sure to go to the opposite side of the room where he fires the shock orbs so you can more easily dodge his sweeping attack. And with that, he's defeated. In fact, most of the bosses in this game, especially the Robot Master fights, all of the fights for the most part, actually follow a very strict and set pattern. There's barely any RNG. In fact, the only bosses who really follow RNG would probably be Compass Man, maybe partially Weatherman, and 2 of the Wily Fortress bosses. Here's one of the introductions with this update, version 1.1.0 and 1.1.1, which is a weapon demonstration, and that's the Double Shock. It's one of the most powerful melee weapons in the game, but when you're using it you can't use ladders, because of course Mega Man has his arms held out, so please keep that in mind. Here's the primary path, or the main path you can take. Instead of focusing on those color block puzzles like it was in the original path, we have to run to the right side of the stage to avoid the firewall. But the paths lead up pretty fast, so it's not much of a problem. In fact, it's slightly faster. Alright, with Digital Man defeated, it's time to go through Sound Man stage. Sound Man isn't weak against Digital Man's weapon, but I'm not going to be using the Roadmaster weaknesses on my first attempt to fighting them, so I can at least show more of what they can do. Although most of the Roadmasters aren't too critically weak against their weaknesses, but I still would like to show fighting them without having a Roadmaster weapon. However, when going through these stages, I will be using Roadmaster weapons extensively, as that's one of my favorite parts of using in Mega Man games and Mega Man fan games. Using and exploiting Mega Man special weapons and utilities to their best usage, because it makes several of these stages a lot more fun and fluid to play through. Otherwise, if I didn't use special weapons as much, I'd rather play other platform shooters, which have more base mechanics. Oh, those poor enemies who are destroyed by the blaring blast. Well, here's one of the main mechanics of the stage. You basically have to stay in these there are several sections with these glass tubes and that loudspeaker in the background. You must stay in those glass tubes to avoid getting hit by the giant blaring blast. Sorry, tongue twisted there. Otherwise you'll take quite a bit of damage. Of course, there's quite a bit of speedrun potential, but if you want to play much more cautiously, stay around the tubes as much as possible. Although the stage design will force you to move faster around the end, which was changed from the original version of the stage where you could play a lot more cautiously. Whereas in this one, near the end of the stage kind of forces you to go a bit faster. That was a bit close. Those small enemies are kind of like tellies, but they slowly orbit onto your position and they do take 3 hits to destroy, so it is kind of annoying. Plus we have these jukebox players where you can only damage on the top head, specifically. Or you can use the Double Shock to just shock them and pierce right through their armor. And of course we saw those Air Jordans or Air Shoes earlier, but I'll get into them soon enough. And now we have this giant duck enemy, or record duck. I don't see the relevance of ducks to this speaker team stage. But anyways, you can fire 4 orbs at your current relative position, and then after it does that, it can stomp the ground and release all of those blocks that can fall onto you. The Air Jordans, when they stomp, they'll fire those 2 electric shocks. And once the electric shocks match your horizontal position, they'll switch their direction and switch either going up or down. So if you're above them, they can start changing direction and try ramming into you from the top or from the bottom. And now we have these blocks which shift direction for where the spikes are pointed. Those spikes aren't instant death, but they are annoying and they can knock you into the instant death spikes. Thankfully, the instant death spikes follow Mega Man 2 spike damage, so it's not Mega Man 1 where you're running into the spikes regardless if you have invulnerability frames will kill you. However, one nasty thing I noticed in the later stages is that spikes aren't solid. Unlike in most Mega Man games and fan games where spikes are solid objects, it's just if you touch them without a spike guard, they'll instantly kill you. In this game, spikes are not solid, so it was kind of a nasty surprise in the Wily stages, so keep that in mind when you're trying to damage boost over certain platforms suspended over bottomless pits. Thankfully in these early stages for the most part, spikes aren't suspended over instant death spikes. And trying to fight these jukebox players can be annoying because of the random positioning of those musical notes. Although in retrospect, it isn't exactly random, it's kind of set. Another nice usage of the Double Shock is that it can actually pierce through these metal shields. And if you're wondering, the 8-bit remix of this stage is actually from Vanishing Gungaroos stage from Mega Man X7. The original version had a mini remix of Vanishing Gungaroos stage, and personally I prefer the MIDI version of this music compared to the 8-bit version or chiptune version, although that's just me. For the stage teams that didn't originally come from 8-bit games, I prefer the For the ones that didn't come from 8-bit games, I prefer the MIDI remixes like from Mega Man X7 and two others that you'll see later. But for songs that originally came from Mega Man titles that were from 8-bit games, I preferred the chiptunes, most of the time. Barring Speed Woman's stage, but we'll get to that in part 3. Here's the last segment I was talking about in the stage where you're forced to move forward. You either have to go back down the ladder or keep running forward so you can actually get through this segment. And if you're tardy for a little bit longer, you'll basically get hit by the Blaring Blast, which isn't instant dead, but it is kind of annoying. Also, another nice touch is that there's more background elements added to the background, like a disco ball. Anyways, here's Soundman. He basically has 3 attacks, and I completely missed getting hit by that, avoiding that. The first one is when he jumps to the left or right side of the stage, where he fires that giant halo, or giant ring. In order to dodge it, they basically jump right in between it. Now, when he does that halo attack, he also has a chance to fire a Blaring Blast, which is a signal where he charges up and starts flashing. Just run to the other side of the rooms to avoid getting hit by it. It's not as good as the player's Blaring Blast, thankfully. And his second or third final attack is where he jumps to the middle of the room, releases that disco orb or whatever, and fires a series of bullets right at the player. Just basically guide it around and you can jump right over it. And try staying near him and try walking away from him so you can actually avoid it more easily. And by defeating Soundman, we get the Blaring Blast, a screen clearing utility that can clear most easy to difficult enemies it can tear right through them with ease. In fact, only hard enemies can be the ones that are going to resist getting one shot, but even then they get 2 shot. So it's one of the more powerful screen clearing weapons in Mega Man fan games and games specifically. For the last Robot Master in this part, I'll be going to Earthman's stage. And for Earthman's stage, we have Groundman's team from Mega Man and Bass, an 8-bit remix. Fitting really, because both are ground-based Road Masters. And you have these stomping enemies. Whenever they stomp the ground, they create a shockwave. Keep in mind that these shockwaves will actually travel right in midair, they don't fall on the ground, or they aren't stopped when you're they're not stopped when you're in the mid-ground. I found out the nasty way. I found out the hard way, specifically in one of my earlier test runs. And we have those mold-type enemies. Once you get close enough, they'll jump over you and fire a shot at you. Get ready to fire several buster shots, or just use the Blaring Blast to take care of them. Or just use the double shot to quickly make minced meat out of them. If there's one thing about this game that I like, it's that most of those special weapons are pretty powerful. They're not exactly as broken or powerful as they were in Mega Man's Rock Force or Mega Man Rock Hard Rivals, but they are still quite useful. And another nice use is that the double shot can actually make minced meat out of these spines as well, which I do appreciate. Also, that was a close jump there. I could have actually fallen the spikes if I had my double shock out. Here we have this claw tank or whatever. Basically, they're one of the most durable regular mooks in the game, where it takes about 10 or 12 buster shots to just destroy them. And they slowly rumble towards you, and they fire one of those claws right up to you, at whatever your last position was. So you can jump up or down, or just walk out of the way to guide them off. Here's an explanation of what I showed about those jumping enemies, of how their shockwaves can actually travel right in midair. That caught me off guard, so be careful while trying to go through these segments while navigating over pits, especially in the Wily Fortress stages. We finished the open air segment, and now we're in the ground segment at this stage. And now we have these dynamite throwing enemies. Once you get close enough to spawn, they'll run up to you and throw these what are these? Dynamite pieces. They're kind of like harder versions of those Raider enemies from Mega Man Rock Force, Cryptoman's stage specifically. And another reference to Indiana Jones, we have to run away from this boulder. That boulder is instant death, by the way, so make sure to keep running. And don't go in the bottom part because you will die. If you want to take that life energy, just wait for the boulder to fall, then come back. Normally this segment's a lot harder, but with the Blaring Blast, or actually with 2 other special weapons, it's a lot easier because you can just take care of that claw tank. Here's the last segment of this stage, these catapults with spikes. If you touch the spike, you'll take damage, but you need to jump on top of it at least on one of the sides so you can propel yourself upward. Now just be careful and get used to how the jumping works, because there will be a segment in the last part which did trip me up twice, where you need to be careful not to get shunted up into the spikes. And here's the last segment of this stage, the water segment. You know, when I went to Earthman stage, I didn't actually expect there to be water. I expected there to be like quicksand or something like in Groundman stage, but nope, there's water. I suppose this is an underground aquifer or something. And it's interesting that this game actually has 3 stages of water segments. 3 Roadmaster stages specifically. The other 2 being Glacier Man and Coppice Man. Coppice Man being the Forest Roadmaster, so it kinda makes sense. And Glacier Man being the Glacial Roadmaster, so it kinda makes sense there too. But Earthman, I didn't really expect it. Oh well, it isn't as bad, and it's not like a wholly dedicated water segment like Glacier Man's stage. And Coppice Man's water segment is not really a pure water segment like this one and Glacier Man's stage. Here's the last segment where we need to run away from the boulder. Here's the segment I was talking about earlier. We have to be a bit careful about the jumping between the platforms. Because if you go to the other side when the spike hits the bottom, you'll get shunted right into the spikes, which happened twice. So be careful. Alright, here's the fight against Earthman. I died once due to a mistake. Anyway, first Earthman jumps to one side of the stage, fires that giant block, throws it, which splits up into 5 smaller pieces, and you need to walk around in one place, or there are actually 2 spots where there's a blind spot where you can avoid getting hit by the rock chunks. And then after that he fires 5 speed drills, which you have to jump over. It's a little bit easier to dodge the speed drills compared to the previous version, where there was more delay in between each shot. But now it's a lot easier. Just make sure not to jump too high because you'll skewer yourself on the spikes. Also, he kind of has like a Gutsman effect, where once he hits the ground, once he jumps to one side of the screen and hits the ground, he basically creates a shockwave which temporarily stuns Mega Man. Although it doesn't stun him so long that you can't dodge the rock chunks, it causes you to take more time to actually shoot him, or take some time away from shooting him. So just do a tap jump before he falls. And by defeating Earthman we get the speed drill, which is basically a rapid fire weapon where if you hold it down, it'll fire those speed drills in a mostly straight pattern, but it deviates slightly. And each speed drill does about 2 points of damage. Well, in this part I defeated 3 Roadmasters, those being Digital Man, Sound Man, and Earthman. And from these 3 Roadmaster stages, I'd say my general thoughts on the updates are mostly positive. In the next part, I'll be taking out 3 more Roadmasters. Thanks for watching, and have a nice day. Toodles!